I teach high school math in the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia. And I'm joined tonight with my esteemed colleague, Chris.
Hi.
You got to say more than hi, Chris. Come on.
I'm Chris. I teach in Ottawa. Yeah, and I've been working with Therese on a few of these workshops. It's been a lot of fun.
And if we're lucky, we'll get a cameo from some of Chris's kids tonight. Fingers crossed.
So tonight we're going to build our Python program together. So we're going to start. I'm just going to share my screen. Can we all see that, Tom?
Beautiful.
Okay. So we're going to start. You're going to open the software, and then you'll see at the bottom of the screen that pops up, it says Add Python, and you're going to choose a new program. And just tell me if I'm going too fast. All right. You'll have to tell me, Tom, because I can't see the chat. So the first thing you need to do is give your program a name. So since this is simulating dice, I called mine dice. And it's a random simulation. So when you think about the type of your program, you can choose, we're going to choose random simulations. And click OK. So you'll see on page 1.1 that there are these two imports. These are like libraries or packages that are in the TI Inspire that gives almost extra functionality that isn't included in Python alone. And I always think of these as add-ons. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to ask the code the handheld to print something. All right. So we're going to go to Menu, 4 for built-ins, 6 for input-output, and 1 for print. And you should see this screen on your page, this line. So we're going to ask it to print. So when you want something to print, you have to use quotation marks. And I'm going to say, hello, all. So the quotation marks are really important. And you'll see in green, this is what's going to print. So let's see what happens.
For us to repeat that sequence. How do you get to the print menu?
Oh,
So I just put it in the chat too. So Kathy, so I'll try to follow up. That's actually a really good. So what I'm going to try to do as Therese and Chris do things kind of and they're accessing things from the menu, I'll try to also put it in the chat. Okay.
Okay.
And I do believe Crystal's in the tech help room if someone can pop over there.
Okay. So
I'm on my way, Tom.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. So we put our hello all of in the quotation marks, and we're going to now run the program. So I'm going to press Control and R. So you see on page 1.2, this is the result of our code. This is hello all. That was pretty, just something simple. Now let's go back and try something new. So we're going to go back to 1.1. And we're going to now ask the user for their name and then say hello to that particular user. So we need to, in order to do this, you need to define the variable name, right? So we'll type in name is equal to, and then we want to type in input what the name is. So to get input, you press menu 4, 6, and 2. So in this input column, you're going to actually ask them, what is your name? So I type in what is your name, I'm in quotation marks. And now instead of saying hello all, you want them to say hello and then pull that name from the variable, from the previous line. Are we all set to run the code? I can't see anybody, so I don't know what I'm asking.
Jody said no. So Jody, you can either unmute yourself or type in the chat kind of thing. So should we just kind of leave the screen up for a moment, or do you need some help getting started again?
No, I'm going to join a breakout room. Who should I join?
So
Or am I just joining? I'm just joining and there's other people there. Is that what I'm seeing? Tech
Yeah,
help? I just go to tech help? Okay, because it took a minute to load, so I missed it all.
So actually, do you want, so maybe jump over to the tech help and then jump back in.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to run our program. So Control R. And it says, what is your name? And then it says hello to me. So you see how the second.
You had to type in Therese though, right?
Yes. Yeah. The user would have to type in their name. Yeah.
So after it said, what is your name? You had to type Therese and then hit enter for it to do the next line and complete the program. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. All right. So let's move on to randomness because we're supposed to be building a dice.
So I got an error. I got an error.
Oh, good.
So I put in my name.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like it.
Can you do us a favor, Kathy?
Sure.
Can you copy?
Ooh, I can't because I'm working on one computer and watching the video on the other.
Okay. All right. No worries. So can you tell us what kind of error you got? Does it tell you anything about the error?
It says file, STDIN, line 2 in module. Oh, I still think I have dice up there somehow from the last thing I was doing.
Okay, so quick question. So there's two pages that Therese has. Do you see how she has a 1.1 and a 1.2?
Yes.
Are you on 1.1 or 1.2?
I don't have, the two lines I don't have in 1.1 are the from math import and the from random import lines. I missed getting those. All
right, so we have some people kind of that just joined us. So you know what might be worthwhile, Therese? Can you just kind of start from a blank page and just show kind of how, because that automatic import's kind of nice. It just saves you a little bit of trouble kind of thing. So let's
I can just do it from here. So if I open
can you go back to even when you did the first one, from the input menu 4.6?
Let's just go back.
So can there's people that were in the breakout and so on. So maybe just start from a brand new page kind of thing, and then people can follow along. So those of you just joining us, we have no ready-made program. We're building this from scratch, okay? Which is always more challenging, but it's important that you learn to, so this is the learning to walk part, okay? So open a new file and add.
So I'm gonna call it dice. And when I choose random simulations as the type.
You see where she did that, Kathy? So in type, you choose random simulations, and that's got to automatically import those two libraries, which is why you got the error.
Okay, just a minute. Just a moment. I'm trying to start a new file and I'm getting myself mixed up. New, add Python, new, right?
Yep.
Okay, there's the dice.
You have a dice. And
random simulations, that's what I think I missed.
There you go.
Okay.
And now when you say okay, you'll see that it automatically imported those two libraries, right?
Right.
Nice. Okay.
So I'm just going to pull up the last thing that I typed in. Oops, if I can type. So I'm going to input a phrase that the code is going to ask the user. So I go menu, 4 for built-ins, 6 for input output, and I'm going to choose 2. And I'm going to put, what is your name? And then I'll put print, hello. Oh, with the capital letters. And then name. So
Now, just to help people, to get the input command, this is the shortcut that you can use. Sorry, not the shortcut. This is the menu kind of structure. So you hit the menu key 462, and that puts the input in. And then for the print command, if you want to get that from the menus, it's menu 461. Okay.
Okay, so we're ready to run?
Yep.
Okay. So it says, what is your name? So I'm going to type in my name and I hit enter. And then it says hello. We all good?
It worked.
Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent. So now we're going to move on to randomness. So I'm going to go back to 1.1. So you move your cursor, or you used to keep that, but you can go back to 1.1. Now I might want to save these 2 lines of code for something later on. So what you can do is you can go in front of the word name and put a hashtag, and notice how it grays it out. So it turns it from code to comment. And that way, if I ever wanted to use it again, I can just take that hashtag out, and now it's activated. So I just put a hashtag before. So we're going to start a new line below the commented code. Again, we're going to have to define a variable because we want to print a random number. So I'm going to say, well, let number equal, and you want to pick a random integer. So we're going to go to menu 6. See, number 6 is random. And number 4 says random with a min and a max. So you can have a range. And so we want to put in a min and a max, and it can be whatever values you want or need for a question. So I'm just going to choose 1 and 100.
So Matt's asking a wonderful question. How is the random number created? Just hang on to that question, because there's some really neat pedagogical stuff Therese will do that will give you some insights into that.
And so we defined our variable as number, but now we have to ask it to print that number. So I'm going to go down below, and I'll use the menu 4 for built-ins, 1 for input output, and I'll print. And I'm just going to print that variable number. So I type it in. Are we good to move on?
Yeah, just give me a quick kind of, like, again, we'd love to hear from you if you're having issues. Kind of let us know in the chat, where we don't want to leave anyone behind. We want everyone to feel success. So Kat's telling us good to go, so I think we're good to go.
Okay. So I'm going to run this a couple of times to see what kind of numbers I get, and then you're going to run it a couple of times and put your numbers in the chat so we can see just how random this is going to be. I'm going to press Control R. And I got 7.
Can you know, it'd be really nice. Why doesn't everyone just throw in the chat right now? What did you get when you hit Control R? What number? Matt got 7. Kat got 7. Fred got 7. Oh, now Kat got, yeah, 90. Well, hang on, Kat. Just
so my next one's 95.
What? Okay, so back to Matt. Like, how does it figure out the random number? That's got to raise some interesting questions.
And my third one was 30.
Huh.
So I think we're going to have to try, if we want a random number, we're going to have to try to get something that gives us a little bit more random. So let's go back to number 1.
Well, I have a question. Does anyone have any idea? Why do we all get 7 and then 95? Like, how is that possible? I thought this was random. Any ideas? Just pop in the chat kind of if you have any ideas. We all started together at 7 p.m., Chris. You're a funny guy. Random isn't so random, Matt says. Yes, there's some funny math cartoons that have to do with that, aren't they? Oh, Shannon has an interesting observation. She said all starting from the same seed number.
That's right.
Interesting, Shannon. Okay.
And that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to insert a blank line above our 2 lines of code. So I'm going to press enter and I get a blank line. And I'm going to do just what Jan said. I'm going to put in a seed. So I go menu, 6 for random, and notice number 7 is seed. And we can actually choose a seed to try and create the concept of randomness, which computers don't actually have. They actually use a seed and to kind of fake randomness. And so I always think of the seed as like the shuffle command when you play music on your iPad, right? So it tries to pick them in random order. So I'm going to put in 1078, which I learned in the summer was Chris's last 4 digits of a cell phone number. And so we're setting the seed. So let's run it again a couple times and see what we get.
Do you want them to use 1078 or do you want them to use
They
the
can use
last
whatever
4
they want.
digits of their phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can, and that'll be an interesting thing because it's but run it a couple times and see what you get. So I get 19, 19, 19. So it's not randomizing the numbers. And what you said, Tom, is really important. If you change the seed number, right? If I put 7401 for my phone number, I get 47, 47, 47. So if you change the seed number, you still get you get the same number, just the number is different.
So just a quick comment too when you do Control R, Therese.
Yep.
And it jumped over to the Python shell page.
Yep.
Therese didn't have to go back to 1.1 to run it again. So in the Python shell page, she could just hit Control R again and it would run it again, and Control R to run it again and again and again. Now, is it just broken? Or so you guys are all getting the same number over and over and over again too? And Jemima, did you get 51 over and over and over again? Huh. Interesting.
So what we need to do is to set the seed on a number that changes all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the random import up top here, right beside the star. And I'm going to import another library that might help us. So I'm going to go to menu, A for more modules, and time 2, and I'm going to import that time module, that time library. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, instead of putting Chris's phone number in there, I'm going to put an integer clock. So I type in INT. And you can either type in clock or you can find it when you go back to that time module. So A2 and then seed number 3 is a clock. Are we ready to try it now? Yep. I'm going to Control R. I get 69. And then 60. 91. So is everybody getting the same numbers as me, or are they getting new numbers?
I keep getting the same number over and over again.
You did.
Can you guys put maybe the first 3 numbers that you got in the chat, each person, and we'll see kind of what happened across the group. So Jody got an error. Interesting. Okay. So Jody, are you able to copy and paste your seed line?
No, I think I see what it is. There's no open bracket before
Gotcha.
clock. So I'm going to just add that in and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
So Fred, 497373. Are you a fast fingered typer, Fred? Or are you pretty slow?
I'm a touch typist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see.
So Kathy wants to know the steps to get from time import. Kathy, are you asking how you get the time import, or the steps that Therese did kind of?
I found it. I found it.
Okay, awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
So it's looking much more random, except for, I mean, Chris Atkinson is like a super fast typer, 83. So does anyone have any idea? So Chris is very fast, like he types, he's always typing. So any ideas why Chris would get 83, and then it'd be 91, and then 39. Any ideas?
How fast can you do Control R?
Yeah. So can you do me a favor for a second right now? Can you at the very top where it says seed integer clock, can you print what the clock value is? Like add another line. So after seed, yeah, let's add another line and print clock. No, I think you have to put the clock kind of with the open brackets and close bracket after it too.
Oh, that's right too.
Okay. Let's see what happens. So Control R. So it's going to print two things. It's going to print the clock and the random number. Okay, hit it again. Hit it again. Anyone have any idea what that number is? Like what the clock number is? Jody, you have an error. So do you still have that error? And Rick is saying, can you type the error? Can you copy the code that you have, Jody, and put it in the chat for us, and then we can kind of troubleshoot it together.
So just to speak on what Tom was saying, random number generators typically use time because computers use a system called the Unix time. And that system is the number of seconds that has occurred between January 1st of 1970 and current time. So the idea, if you're not special like Chris and get the same number all the time, would be that you would never get the same number because, or hardly ever get the same number because time is always moving forward. So if even up to this presentation, we've had since 1970, approximately 1.6 times 10 to the 9 integers or seconds pass. So there's a lot of numbers that they can choose from.
But do you see the decimals get lopped off with that integer command, because the int in front of clock is basically saying, take the integer part of this number.
Yeah.
So the thousandths of a second don't come into play in the way that Therese has her seed structured right now. So from where does the number come? Now, from where does the number come? So you mean after it has a seed, kind of where does the number come? Yeah. So there's some algorithm in the background, right? That's generating a number, and the algorithm is predictable, right? But what is it? I have no idea. And that's a whole area of math, kind of for random number generators, right? The algorithms that are built into it. It's a fascinating area.
Okay, so I just wanted to see what Jody's code was. I'm just wondering, Jody, if you're missing another bracket. Yeah, you're missing a bracket up here under clock, after clock. See, I have 4.
Thank you. I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now that was my part, and now Chris is gonna drill you with doing loops.
All right. I'm just going to fire up my screen here.
Just to give people kind of a sense of where we're headed too. Like the title of this session is Simulating Dice. And so we're headed to kind of you building your own dice simulation machine, I guess is where we're headed with this.
Okay, so we left off with the clock. So I'm gonna comment out the clock because I don't need to see the printout of the clock right now. And I'll leave my seed in. And actually, let me come over here to 1.2. If I take a look at 1.2, as Therese was saying, this is the number of seconds since the epoch time. So I've noticed here 3 decimal places after. So I can multiply by 1,000 and get no matter how fast I press Control R, I'll get a random seed. So if I come back here, I'm just going to put my code to multiply by 1,000. I'm going to multiply the clock by 1,000. And then I'm going to take that value and convert it to an integer and use that as my seed. So that will prevent me from running it too fast and getting the same number over and over again. I'll keep that in there going forward. And I don't, yeah, so I'll leave it there for now. So we're gonna look at looping structures, because when you're running random simulations, it's interesting to run a random simulation once, but the real power in running a random simulation on software is to be able to run it multiple times, more times than I could sit here and flip a coin for on my thumb. So we need a looping structure, some sort of control structure. Now to get the looping structure, you want to move yourself down to a blank line just below where we were. So I'll start a new blank line below the printing of the number. And in the menu system, I want to go to menu and then number 4 for built-ins, number 2 for control structures, and number 4 for the for index in range size. And this is a for loop that's going to cause it to repeat multiple times for us. So again, the key sequence is menu 4 2 4. I'll do that. Menu 4 2 for control, 4 for my for index in range size.
Chris, can you do us a favor? Can you copy the code and just put it in the chat for people, kind of like not now when you've got it built in, because I think some people kind of are running into some errors. So what they can then do perhaps is just kind of copy the code out of the chat and paste it into the TI Inspire for themselves.
Sure. I'll get us started here with about this. I meant to put it at the bottom of this line, but this will do for now. Call the whole thing. So here's where we're starting from. All right, so you notice when you put your for loop in, it's looking for a couple of values. It's got an index and a size, and it's got this block. So these are my 3 placeholders for what I'm going to be filling in. So the index is going to be kind of my counter, and we can call it whatever we want. Let's see what I've called it over here for I. So it's common to use the letter I in programming as an index. So I'll just use I for I in range, and my size is going to be the number of times it runs through the loop. So I'm going to change this to 10. So I want to loop through 10 times. Okay, and I'm going to take this print my number. You can either copy it or you can go through the input sequence again, and I'm going to replace that in the block. That's the block of code that's going to run. So print number. I'm going to comment out that for now. There we go. So my code, all it's doing, all my code, I've got my import statements at the top. From math import, my random import, my time import, and then everything else is commented out except for the seed. I'm seeding my calculator for random numbers. Not that it's going to be all that important right now because I'm not using random yet, but for I in range 10, so it's going to go through this loop 10 times, counting with the letter I, it's going to print out a number. Okay, so I'm going to run this code, Control R to run the code. And you'll see that it blows up on me. This is name error. Now this is really handy. In Python, you get some useful error tracking, and you'll see it says name error, name number isn't defined. And it tells me what line the problem's on. So I'm going to see here on line 11, I'm going back to line 11. I'm going to look for the word number. So I'm going to go back to my code, and you'll see here at the top right-hand side, it tells me what line number I'm on. So I'm going to scroll back up to line 11, and it says here that number is not defined. So it's trying to print out number, but it doesn't know what number is. So what do you think I should print out instead if I want to print out the first 10 values? What value? You can put it in the chat. What value do you think I should replace number with? All right, I got a couple suggestions for I. Let's try that. So I'm going to Control R to run that. And look at that, I've got 0 through 9. So 0 through 9 is a bit quirky in that it's not 1 through 10, but it is the first 10 values. You'll notice that when we're coding in Python, it counts from 0. It always indexes from 0. So if I want that to print out the numbers 1 through 10, maybe you can suggest in the chat, what do you think I would change that print statement to say in order to print 1 through 10 instead of 0 through 9? Oh yeah, there we go. So I'm going to change that to I plus 1. Control R to run that. I get 1 through 10. Exactly. Good job. All right, so I've managed to do a loop printing out the first 10 values. Now I'm going to challenge you a bit here. Well, we've done 1 through 10. We've already challenged the first modification, but I want you to modify your code once again to print the numbers 10 through 1. So see if you can print out 10 through 1 instead of 1 through 10. I'll give you a second to work on that. And once you have it, what I'd like you to do is share your code in the, or share the line in the chat to let us know what you did to get 10 through 1. Now, if you're getting error messages or if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat or just speak up as well. We're happy to walk you through those. All right, Kat's coming up with a suggestion for us.
Nice.
10 minus I. Let me try Kat's suggestion. Nice. 10 through 1. Well done. Done. All right, so if you've got 10 through 1, then I'm going to challenge you to the next one, which is modify your code to print 10 random numbers. Okay, and if you've got the 10 random numbers, I'd like you to modify your code again to ask the user how many random numbers they want and print out that many random numbers. So there's 2 challenges for you. If you're still working on 10 through 1, make sure you can get your 10 through 1.
Yeah.
And then the next couple challenges are there for you.
Modify your code to print 2.
That's great. Good work working through that, Kat. Good job, Shannon.
Okay.
I'm going to work on the 10 random numbers as well. Kind of got a hint here already, right? All right, I've got my 10 random numbers. So you can check my code to see how you're doing with your 10 random numbers. But I'm going to repurpose the code at the top here on line 7. I can get rid of line 8. I won't need, or line 9 or 8 rather. I won't need that print statement, but I want to want to ask the user, this is my second challenge, right? Modify your code to ask the user how many random numbers they want. Therese walked us through how we accept input from the user. So I'm going to repurpose this input statement up top here. I'll call this how many. And I'll say how many is going to be equal to the input of how many numbers do you want? So I'm going to ask the user at the beginning, how many numbers do you want? And then I'm going to seed my calculator and I'm going to print out the random numbers. So I've got some starter code here for you. If you haven't finished that challenge already, I'm going to copy this into the chat. Okay, there's my starter code for you. It needs to be modified so that you can print out X number of, or how many number of numbers. So let's see if someone can give us a hint or give us a solution to how we're going to print out a random number of, or a user defined number of how many numbers. Nice. Yeah, Kat, good suggestion there. You didn't have to use an extra variable. You can generate your random integer right in the print statement. It's awfully quiet.
And just so you guys know, like this is challenging when you take a group of people through coding from scratch, right? So you're never sure, is silence it's going wonderful for everyone, or are people lost? So you don't be shy. Like this is challenging, like this idea that you're building things, like a misplaced comma or a missing bracket, and nothing works, right? So don't be afraid to ask in the chat if you're running into some problems. There's a lot of stuff that Chris is sharing with you right now. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so it's either good or bad, Chris.
Can't really tell.
I'll go for good. Let's go for good.
That's good.
We'll be positive. Oh no, Kat said it's bad. Nice. Okay. So Kat says I'm stuck. Awesome. And then Matt says, I thought how many, and then in range brackets is what. So Matt's saying kind of, he wants to put the how many in the range. So instead of a 10.
Excellent.
And then Kat says I'm stuck.
Okay, so I'm going to run this. I changed the range to be how many. I'm going to run it. And how many numbers do I want? Let's say 5. And it's going to throw an error. But remember, these errors are really helpful, right? It says it's a type error. Unsupported types for LT int string. So int and string. It's on line 11. So I know I'm having trouble with the type of something on line 11. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go to line 11. Where's 11? 11 is a number. So that's okay. And how many is my input for my range? That's on line 9. Did it mention anything about line 9? No, that's not too helpful, is it? But we know the integer and the string is the problem. So I'm gonna tell you what the answer is. In the range, if you recall, when I first put my for loop in here, let me do that again. Menu, built-ins, control, for. If I tab and hover over this size thing here, Tom, where's my hover over prompts?
You have to hit tab to go to the next one.
Yeah, I want the.
What is it you want?
You know how it has the yellow pop-up box? It tells you the input suggestions, what it's looking for.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're not going to give it to me on that one, is it?
No.
That's too bad. Okay, so it's looking for an integer for how many. And even though you're collecting the number of runs you're going to do as a number, any input that the user puts in is seen as a string. So Kat's got it there. Yeah, so what I need to do is I need to cast this how many to an integer. You can do it through the menu system, or I can just type in int, which is going to be faster for me on the keyboard.
Make sure you close the brackets at the end
Yeah,
though.
definitely make sure I close that bracket.
And there's a question, or sorry, Maria says, it asks how many numbers. I entered 5 and I got 10.
Wow. So it sounds to me, Maria, like you didn't change the range up here to how many. Instead, you left it as 10.
Right. Because originally we had 10 there. Yeah. Yeah. She said, okay, got it.
Excellent. So I'm going to run this. Ooh, not going to find. I'm going to run this. Control R. How many imports do I want? I want 5 numbers. They're my 5 random numbers. Okay. Can I get an update from you to let me know, is it better now or is it still bad?
I'm getting a lot of got it's kind of an, oh, okay, got it.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I'm going to move this forward. Awesome. Okay, so we've got some random numbers, which is great. But the purpose of the activity was rolling dice. We want to simulate the rolling of dice. So dice is a number between 1 and 6 most of the time. So let's take a look at changing our input, or our random numbers, to be a number between 1 and 6. You can see here on the right-hand side from my sample, I've got kind of some starter code for you. I'm going to copy this into the chat to save you some time, but I'll walk you through what it is. So I've got die 1, which is going to be a random number between 1 and 6. I've got die 2, which is going to be a random number between 1 and 6. So I've got my 2 die. And then I'm going to store in the variable die sum, the sum of those 2 dice. And then I'm just printing out what the result of that was. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into my screen here. I'm going to comment out my for loop for now because I don't want to complicate for loop with what I'm just putting out. I'm just going to roll 2 dice and print it out. So I want die 1, which is equal to randint 1, 6. I've got die 2, which is equal to randint between 1 and 6.
And for those of you that, again, typing stuff is great if you know where things are. But if you want to know where the rand int is, if you just show them kind of the menu, random, and then there's kind of a random integer option kind of there. So random, so there's a rand int kind of where you can define a min and a max, which is a little different than the random number generator that we used before.
Right. And then I want to add die 1 and die 2. Sometimes my variable names are a little bit confusing or hard to type out. So I'm going to show you where I can find these quicker. You've got a var key here next to the delete button on the keyboard. So if I click on var, I can see I can access the variables I've already used. So I'll click on die 1 and say I'm going to add that to, I'll go to var again, die 2. So my die sum is going to be defined as die 1 plus die 2. And then I'll just write up a print statement. You could use the sequence again for output. So menu, built-ins, number 4, number 6 for IO, input output, and number 1. So menu 461 for print. And I'm just going to concatenate a whole bunch of strings here. The string is going to be die 1, colon, leave a little space, comma, and I'm going to pick a variable, which is going to be die 1. So that'll tell me what die 1 was, comma again. It's going to be really tricky to make sure you catch all your spaces and quotes in this. So you have to be very careful when you type it out.
Guaranteed there's going to be errors here without question.
So I'm going to copy this into the chat in a second here as well.
Impressive, Matt.
All right, so this is the block. There's the block you're looking for. I'm just assuming I got it right. I copied it in. Let me run it and see how many numbers. Let's say 34. I'm only running once. So there's my die 1 is a 6, die 2 is a 3, and the sum of 6 and 3 is 9. Fantastic. All right, so I was successfully able to roll 2 die and determine the sum of those die. And I've put the code for that code block into the chat if you're trying to catch up or if you've got an error on your side. Yeah, well done, Matt. All right, so then rolling one die is kind of neat, but again, random simulations, we want to put it into a for loop so we know how many times we want to roll the dice. So I had earlier commented out the for loop. I'm gonna uncomment that for loop. I'm just gonna get rid of the hash there. And I'm gonna get rid of this line. I don't need the number because I'm generating them as dice now. And I can get rid of the print statement because I'm printing out the die at the end there. Now you'll notice in Python that Python is a tabbed language. You have to pay attention to how many tabs you have. So anything I want to run in that loop needs to be spaced over 2 spaces. And I'm going to space die 1 over 2 spaces, space die 2 over 2 spaces, space the die sum over 2 spaces, and I'll space my print statement over 2 spaces. So everything that's spaced over 2 spaces will run within that loop. And I do have a question here about the seed. So Matt wanted an explanation of the seed. So the seed here is taking the clock value in seconds, multiplying it by 1,000 to get milliseconds, and then converting that to an integer and using that as a starting value for the randomization algorithm. So you'll get a truly random set of numbers compared to the person sitting beside you.
Yeah, just the starting value.
That's right.
And then the algorithm kicks in, kind of whatever that is. And Shirley had she said, I've recognized that blocks means a space. Do you mean the tabs underneath the for loop, Shirley?
These little diamonds, they indicate a space.
No, just actually when I copy it into my screen, it's all just one line on mine.
So that's a pain. Okay.
Yeah. So I have to
copy
go
it
through
line by line, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, instructionally, you guys, like virtually all of you have been in all these sessions, kind of, or many of the sessions that we've done. And you've noticed that in the previous sessions, we started with kind of an existing set of code that we either added to or made changes to and that kind of thing. This feels different, doesn't it? When you're building something from scratch, like there's a lot more room for things to go astray. So the need to have, for instance, a tech help room, really important in an activity like this. And it's a different thing. So there's a lot more focus on, hang on, you missed a comma. Oh, there's a this, there's a that kind of thing. So a lot of the errors that pop up are very different.
I would also add, Tom, that when you build it like this, especially when you're new, I think Kat said she was new. When you're building it like this, you start to recognize when to put spaces, when to put quotations, when you use commas, and when you get the error messages, because they're so well laid out. Well, most times they're well laid out in 1.2 if you end up with an error.
So, there we go. All right, so I should
so
have.
Kat said I'm stuck. Okay, so Kat, are you able to copy your code and put it in the chat, or can you unmute and maybe describe what's happening? Awesome. All right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to stay muted though, just because there's family stuff going on.
Okay, let's all take a look at Kat's code and let's see if we can troubleshoot this together.
Oops. I'm gonna run mine, make sure it runs. It does.
So is anyone seeing kind of where things?
Does it give you an error message when you run it, Kat? Syntax error, no syntax. Okay.
Almost guaranteed, Maria. The syntax error is on the print line. So the space in print die 1, someone noted here. So Shannon noted a space in print and then die 1. Let's see. Oh, I see right now. So, oh no, that's, yeah. No, that shouldn't matter. You mean the space out before that, eh? Yeah, it says, here's the error. Do you see her error? How many numbers trace back? Invalid syntax integer with base 1. Chris, are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. That's a rather unhelpful error.
So Chris, can you copy your code right now, kind of for someone that has joined us? That Crystal was in the tech help kind of thing, so she has a starting point for us.
Sure.
Maybe include like that whole page, including the. And for some reason, it's not always being friendly, kind of when you copy and paste. Normally in Zoom, it works really well, but it looks like it's being grumpy with some of the indents and stuff. Yeah, you just hit space, Matt, to get you go to the front of the line and hit space or tab, and it'll insert. I'm not sure if it inserts one diamond at a time or two, Chris.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
One at a time. So you just got to make sure that you stick 2 diamonds in. 2 diamonds equals kind of an indent.
So Philip had a question for me. Could you also run the look after the block identifying your random integers? What do you mean by the look, Philip?
Sorry, that's my typing, my sausage fingers on a little tiny keyboard. It's loop.
Oh, the loop. Can I run the loop after the block identifying your random integers for die 1 and die 2? You could, but the problem there would be it wouldn't randomly generate new dice numbers for you. So you'd get a repeat of all your dice over and over and over again.
So basically you'd get stuck in a loop.
No, let me show you. Something like this, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
So watch what happens. If I do 10 of them, I get all the same dice.
Like I said, stuck in a loop.
Yeah. Okay, so I wasn't able to, well, my code is fine. There's a human error. No code. Oh, okay, good. Because I wasn't able to find the problem with cats. Okay. Ready to generate. Okay.
Oh, I was just wondering if Kat had put the 2 diamonds, if that was maybe why it didn't work. I don't know, because when it copied, I don't think it copied it.
I'll tell you what I did. So this was super brilliant. And by brilliant, I mean not brilliant at all. So what I had done is when I hit Control R and it said how many, I hit enter. And so then it said, it generated the error, basically saying, you didn't tell me anything, champ.
Right. That happens a lot. That happened a lot this summer with us, for sure. Yeah. That sequence of it, ask the question, you have to have an input and then hit enter. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to move ahead because we're starting to run short on time. A little note on typecasting. Here are 3 different ways. Oops. You can typecast. You can typecast the input to an integer as you receive the input. You can typecast the integer explicitly to an integer after you've received the input and resave it as roles. Or you can see how I've used it. I've typecast roles to an integer as I'm using it. So I always know that roles was a received input. So I know it's going to be a string. If I need to use it as a integer, I typecast it when I need it. So all 3 of those methods are acceptable. It's just a matter of programming style.
Someone's saying, can you share that with us, Chris?
Yeah. Tom, are you okay to share the slide deck?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll share the slide deck later on then.
If you email it to me in the background, I'll throw it in the chat. Or if you have it on your computer right now, just dump the file on your chat.
How about that? There we go. All right, so we're going to store these lists. So we want to be able to use this data. It's really neat to see all these dice rolls show up on our screen, but the real power of the TI Inspire is being able to use and visualize the data. So let's get to doing that. So we want to collect this data into a list or an array. I'm going to define an empty array at the beginning of my for loop. So you'll see between my seed and my for loop, I'm going to create a sums array and it's going to be empty. So let me come and do that. I'm going to make a line between. Yeah, you can make it. Go ahead. Between there, after seed and before for, I'm going to create sums. That's a new variable, and that's going to be equal to. And if you want to use the menu system, you can go to menu, number 4 for built-ins, number 4 for lists, and number 1 for a new empty list. It's just open and close square bracket essentially. So I'm creating an empty sums list. And then at the very bottom of my loop, after I go through this, this process, I want to store or append to that list a value. So I'm going to take sums and I'm going to say append. You can use dot append on the keyboard, or you can use the menu system, menu 446. And if you're doing this in a classroom, I highly recommend using the menu system to avoid spelling errors, because not a lot of students can spell append properly. And we found that this summer anyway. So you go to menu 4 for lists, and I'm looking for number 6, dot append. And it's going to ask me to append an item. And because I've got a sums list, I want to append the die sum here. I can either go to my var. Oh no, I can't go to the var because it's inside the loop. I have to type out die sum. So every time through this loop, it's going to add to the list of sums whatever the die sum was for that particular role.
And just so in case people are saying, oh my God, I'm getting lost, it's going fast. Chris is speeding up, right? So because he's watching the clock. So this is where the recording may be useful to kind of loop back at a later time. This is getting into complicated stuff.
Yeah. So I'm starting to ignore the chat, but nobody's saying anything yet. All right, so now I need to share the data with the TI system, the calculator system. So once I've got a Python list of all these die sums, I'm going to send that data into the TI system. Now I need to import another library to do that. In order to communicate with the TI system, I need to add a library at the top. So I'm going up here to the top. I'm going to add a blank line after my time import. And I'm going to follow this menu sequence. So menu A31 to import the TI system. So menu A for more modules, 3 for my TI system, and 1 for my TI system import. And that will bring in the TI system libraries. So now I can communicate with the TI. All right. Now what I want to do is take that list, the Python list that I saved as sums, and I want to send it to the TI. And there's a function for that called store list. I can get to that function by going menu, A for more modules, 3 for TI system, and 5 for store list. Store list, here's my little yellow pop-ups that I was looking for earlier, right? These gives you some prompts as to what it's looking for. So TI Inspire list name and the Python list name. Well, the Python list name is sums, and the TI Inspire list name is whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to call this one my dice roll sums. How's that sound? Dice roll sums. It can't have spaces in it, so just keep that in mind. That'll throw an error on you. So dice roll sums is going to be the TI list name. Sums is going to be my dice roll. Now, if I run this, I'm going to run the program, Control R, and get 10 random numbers, or 10 random dice rolls. That information is now saved in my TI system. So I'm going to go to the home button on the calculator and add this purple data and statistics page, the bar graph. And you'll see that I've got 10 data points here. These are the 10 data points for my dice rolls. Clicking on the x-axis, click here to enter the variable name. So clicking on the x-axis, you'll see here's the dice roll sums that I created. That's the list that I sent over from my Python program. This gives me a nice bar chart or dot plot of the dice roll sums. And if I come back to my code and I run it again, Control R, this time I do 100 numbers. It's going to take a second to run through those 100 numbers. And then come back to my 1.3, which is my graph. You'll see that it's automatically updated the dot plot for me. If I want to rescale it, I click on the variable and just reselect the variable, and you'll see it's now rescaled the window to cover all the data for me. Dot plots are great. Sometimes we want to see a histogram. So if I go to menu, number 1 for plot type, and number 3 for histogram, my dot plot turns into a nice little histogram.
And one of the things that may be useful, Chris, when we post the recording of this session, maybe what we can have is like a completed TNS file, TI Inspire file, kind of with all the code, the correct code and everything for all the pieces.
Yeah, sure.
That might be useful kind of for people to see all the bits and pieces there.
Okay.
Because those last few steps that Chris just took us through are complex, but mathematically meaningful and powerful. This idea that you can randomly generate data and then model that data and think about kind of the relationship between theoretical and experimental probability, for instance. There's all kinds of things, and you'll see in our next workshop, webinar next week, we're going to do something very similar, but with the TI Innovator Hub, we're going to collect data from it. So it's not randomly generated data, but it's going to be data from a device that's collecting data. But we'll do similar things, push it over so that we can model it. So Jody asked, why is the store list not indented too? Great question.
So every time I run through my loop, I'm taking the die sum and storing it in the sums list. So I'm adding to the sums list.
Which is a Python list. So this is in Python has its own little world, right?
At the end of running through this loop, I've got this sums variable with a list of all my dice rolls.
A whole bunch of numbers in this list.
I want to take that at the end of the for loop and take that list and just pass it over to my TI system. So I don't want to do it every time I run through the loop.
So it's building the for loop literally is building the list. And once it's built the list outside of the for loop, it's done, right? Now I'm going to push it over to the TI Inspire space. That's a good question. And conceptually, it took me a long time to kind of appreciate what was going on, like what it was doing and how it related to the code. So it's not a trivial thing.
That's right. The indent is all the loop. Everything you want to run in the loop has to be indented.
Because the programming languages I was used to, you'd always have to have the end statements kind of to close off the loops. So you don't need those if you use the indents with Python, with the diamonds, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, what Chris is doing right now is like running this a lot of times, and you can see it takes a while because it has a print it all. If he didn't have the print statement, if he commented out that print statement, he'd get kind of 1,000 rolls instantly. So here we're approximating kind of the theoretical probability of the different sum rolls, which is exactly, yeah.
Okay, so if I go to menu, plot type, I had a dot plot to begin with. I go to menu, 1 for plot type, 3 for histogram.
So every environment, Matt, has a different menu structure. So this is a data and statistics page, which is why the menu looks totally different than for a Python page.
All right, so next steps, if you're interested in pursuing that further, we have some more webinars on light and sound, so you can get your TI hub connected and maybe trigger a dice roll based on an action, or maybe have a sound happen every time you roll a dice. So some more stuff to play around with.
For those of you that have used a microbit, it has an accelerometer built into it, and it actually connects to the TI Inspire, and you can code it in Python. And if you shake the microbit, you can use that to kind of, now roll the dice again or something like that. That's a really nice one to code as well. So there's a lot of creative things that you can do with this. So thank you very much, Chris and Therese, and to the group again tonight. I think that a lot of these people will be looping back to the recording, because there was a lot of kind of really, really important but difficult kind of ideas coming at you pretty quickly. So, and we're going to revisit a lot of these in the next session. So next week, when we start doing the stuff with the TI Innovator Hub, you'll see a lot of these ideas that Chris was playing with Resurface and Therese. Yes, I will be looping for sure. So thank you all. I'm going to end the recording right now. Appreciate kind of everyone's attendance again. And let me make sure I actually stop the recording this time.